Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Let's take a look now at the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, as we've been discussing this evening, the hot weather is going to stay with us for much of the bank holiday weekend. There you go, clear skies for much of the British Isles, and it's going to be pretty hot as well. There might be a little bit of a thundery downpour in some parts early tomorrow morning, but once that's gone, it's going to be pretty warm, getting up to 19 degrees in the southeast, pretty warm elsewhere as well. Throughout the day, those temperatures are going to rise, possibly hitting the high 20s, even the 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Up next, it is The Wrap with Gillian, and the family of Virginia Giuffre speak to Sky News about the police investigation into Andrew.
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Tonight on The Wrap, the family of Virginia Giuffre tells Sky News they've been given hope by UK police investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over allegations of sexual misconduct.
It was a good news for us today, so I think we're very hopeful.
The United States again criticises NATO. We go underground with the British forces preparing to meet any threat from Russia. The England football manager Thomas Tuchel defends the controversial choices in his World Cup squad.
We did it to our best knowledge and to our full belief. We want to arrive with a strong squad, with a strong team that is fully committed, and we got this.
Plus, the bank holiday heat wave, with today the hottest day of the year so far. And the United States unseals more than 200 previously unseen files relating to UFOs. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the investigative journalist Susie Boniface and the political commentator Benedict Spence. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers from 1:30. Good evening to you and to you, Susie and Benedict. Now, we begin tonight with the family of Virginia Giuffre telling Sky News they've been given hope by a UK police investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over allegations of sexual misconduct. The former prince has denied any wrongdoing. Our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock, has this report.
No sign of Andrew at his home on the King's private Sandringham estate. Out of sight, but still in the spotlight. And the investigation into his conduct still in the minds of the family of his accuser, Virginia Giuffre.
To hear that the potential of investigating sexual crimes, that is huge. It is more than what we're seeing here in this country, and it actually gives us hope.
After years of frustration, they have optimism and a fresh plea for potential victims to speak out.
We understand what it takes to come forward, the bravery, the courage. But I would also say that the world is listening in a way that it wasn't listening before.
Also from the US, politicians renewing their call for Andrew to come to Congress.
What is very discouraging and very disappointing is the fact that this is not being done on our side of the pond here in the U.S. They deserve to have justice. They deserve to be heard. And we're going to do everything that we can to ensure that they get the justice that they deserve.
Andrew has always strongly denied any wrongdoing.
Charlotte and Louis, if you're listening, make sure you're on time, please. Yes. Make sure you're not fighting over who's listening to what.
On the Isles of Scilly, there was lots of chat from Prince William on breakfast radio.
Charlotte particularly is obsessed by Taylor Swift.
But not a word about his uncle.
It was amazing.
It's now 3 months since this infamous image. He was the first royal to be arrested for hundreds of years. The investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor continues with a wide scope, including possible sex crimes and corruption, connected with his time as an international trade envoy. His arrest was triggered by revelations in the Epstein files, the convicted paedophile once his close friend. It is a scandal which, by association, threatens the reputation of the royal family. And it's a damaging drama the King does not enjoy. Here in Stratford to watch The Tempest, a rather telling tale of feuding brothers and a duke in exile. The police investigation into Andrew is moving and evolving, but this is a complex case and could last months, even years. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Benedict, what did you make of what the family of Virginia Giuffre had to say?
Well, of course, they are almost, or rather have almost been forgotten amidst all the furore that's been going on with the story of Jeffrey Epstein and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and everything that's sort of gone on with that. And it's obviously been a tremendously difficult time for them because, of course, this is a member of their family whose personal life and personal suffering has been played out in front of the media, in fact, posthumously in her case, which in of itself is, of course, an awful tragedy. And one does get the feeling that actually, if there is to be a semblance of justice for them, it's going to take a very long time, and it's going to be a very torturous process. And you can sort of sense that they might have thought, given the sort of the scale of what we're talking about, that they might never have anticipated that it might come. So you can see why them talking about getting a glimmer of hope would be priceless for them, because I suspect there have been so many moments where certainly Virginia Giuffre herself would have felt this, that they must also have felt that actually there would have been nothing out of this, and that it would have just been forgotten, it would have been, dealt with by some other means, and that actually what she has claimed happened to her would never fully be explored and fully be demonstrated. So you have to have, I think, some sympathy and some happiness, actually, that they are at least going to get something out of this, even if it is just a hope. That's better than actually what they've been experiencing for a very long time.
And they say that they do feel a hope now, and in fact have criticised the American authorities for not being as proactive as the British police.
Yeah, it's kind of indicative, isn't it, that, 20 years ago, according to the new documents that we've had released, this man and his mother were sort of in so much power and had the people who ran this country in so much thrall that she can suggest that her son get a job he was completely unqualified for, and everyone falls over themselves in the highest places in this country to make sure he has that job and it's the way that he wants it to be, rather than checking if he'd be any good at it first. And then 20 years later, he's subject to multiple investigations, and, who his parents are doesn't matter anymore in quite the same way. Whereas in the States, of course, there haven't been anywhere near the same kind of investigations, and it would appear to be that actually Andrew is the least powerful out of all the people that have been connected to the Epstein allegations, so many of whom have managed to sort of brush it off or just carry on with things. He appears to be the only one that's sort of facing any real consequences. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell obviously is serving time, but in a nice prison, and everybody else involved is just sort of brushing it away. I suppose, money does actually speak more than royalty these days.
Benedict, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has, as we know, denied all allegations against him, but this does put more pressure on the King, doesn't it?
I think it does put a lot of pressure on the King, but I think actually, Susie was talking about how if this comes back to anybody, it's probably going to come back to the late Queen, and by definition, her being the late Queen, there's not going to be as much scrutiny or that much pressure or that much sort of in the way of repercussions if something does come of this. Actually, I think that she will be the one that people look at predominantly and go, that's perhaps where the knowledge was and perhaps where the blame lies. And it'll be interesting to see actually what comes out of the royal family in terms of leaks, in terms of at what point is it that Charles knew, how much did he know, at what point did he push to have his brother sort of expedited from the family, because we've heard, differing stories of that, as time has gone on. I'm sure that it will have a lot of pressure on him to continue to sort of obviously separate himself from his brother, but also in terms of what the royal family does going forward, what its role is in terms of, for instance, supporting victims of sexual assault. And we all know that his wife, the Queen, has played a role in that, and it's actually something that's very personal to her. And so I do wonder if perhaps there might not be quite as much pressure on the royal family because of the direction that they are now going in. And I think also the younger generations, certainly Prince William, I think they're quite savvy about this sort of thing. I think they've understood what was going on, or at least that's my understanding, for some time, and I think that they've been quite good at distancing themselves from it.
But I think the real threat to the royal family is not so much what Andrew did or didn't do or how this, whatever happens, it's the fact that this investigation itself and the parliamentary scrutiny means that far more about royal processes are going to be opened up to public view. And speaking as an investigative journalist, it is impossible to get government or anybody else to tell you anything that the sovereign has been involved in, to give you that piece of paper, to tell you what the decision was, to tell you how it was influenced. There's a process now whereby the biggest risk to them will be that you establish a precedent whereby what the sovereign says, what kind of support they have for public appointments, what the internal discussions are, will have to start coming out. And if they start doing it for one little thing like this, it will establish a precedent, which means lots of other things have to come out too, and that's what Charles will really be worried about, and William.
Just very quickly, the calls today coming out of America that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor should appear before Congress. Do you think that's ever likely to happen?
I don't think it's likely. I also don't think it's necessary. I actually think he is facing allegations in this country. That's who he's beholden to. I think maybe the United States, that system might want to get its own house in order, maybe move along a little bit in their own investigations as to what's going on. I don't see that it should be that actually the people that are being dragged into the spotlight in the UK should be used to distract any more from what's going on there. Now, if perhaps it can be used to expedite that process, then fine. But I don't think that's what it would be about. I think it would be about obscuring the fact that many people in the United States are not being pursued anywhere near as viciously as people are in the UK.
OK. Staying with the United States now, and America has once again criticised NATO, saying it has to be of value to the United States. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said that denying America the use of NATO bases had undermined the alliance.
I understand NATO is valuable to Europe, and it should be. It also has to be valuable to the United States. So we always have to make that argument in every administration, in every era. And that's what we're in the process of doing now, is explaining, this is the value of NATO to the United States. It's related to that is what our force posture is within that alliance, what our contributions are. So obviously, one of the things that I've always used, and I've long been an advocate for NATO in my time in the Senate, and one of the arguments I always made was that these bases in the region provided us logistical options that we wouldn't otherwise have. And when some of those bases are denied to you during a conflict that we're involved in, then you question whether that value is still there. So that's going to have to be discussed. There's no doubt about it. I think there's also going to have to be some focus on how, a year after the meeting at The Hague, how much progress has been made in terms of the increased contributions. There are some countries that have doubled their defense spending over the last few years. There are others that are still lagging. In the end, the goal is to have a NATO that is strong, and the stronger our NATO allies are, the stronger NATO is going to be.
Well, while the future of the NATO alliance comes under scrutiny, Sky News has joined British soldiers taking part in a war games exercise designed to test what might happen in a conflict with Russia. Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, was there to watch it unfold at London's Charing Cross Underground Station.
I'm in the middle of an army war game. In this scenario, the year is 2030 and Russia has just invaded the Baltic states. It's triggered Article 5 of the NATO alliance that says an attack on one is an attack on all, and the UK is in the fight. The British Army leads a headquarters that oversees up to 100,000 NATO military personnel, and that headquarters has been deployed to Estonia. In reality, I'm in an underground station in London. In the game, this is meant to be civilian infrastructure underground in the Estonian capital of Tallinn. It's been transformed, as you can see, into a military headquarters. There are screens, there are computers, there are soldiers that are getting in feeds from the surface. In the scenario, there are thousands of Army, Navy, Air Force personnel above the ground that are operating weapon systems, trying to fight the Russians, but they are using technology. This is a futuristic scenario 5 years from now, when the UK believes that it will much more have embraced artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, drones, electronic warfare, drawing on all of the technology that you see right now in Ukraine to be able to fight. Now, they've taken the headquarters underground because, of course, it's much safer down here because it's harder to find. They know that the Russians will be looking for them as much as they are looking for the enemy. And here you can see soldiers lined up on their laptops, drawing in information. They will be feeding it all together using AI to help to speed up decision-making. We've been told that it can only take a couple of hours to do planning that previously would have taken days. And here you can see they're literally doing this next to the underground. This is a disused part of the platform, but it really underlines how, at a time of war, all infrastructure can be used by the military to help them fight. For the soldiers here, they are obviously doing this just as an exercise, but they know full well that the threat is real. Russia is already fighting in Ukraine, and military commanders talk a lot about the potential for Russia to test NATO by triggering an Article 5. And that's why the message that we keep on hearing is about the importance of investing in defence. The military are waiting just as much as everybody else for the government to decide how it's going to be spending more money on the armed forces. forces and whether it's going to invest fast enough in the technology, the drones, the electronic warfare capabilities, the space capabilities that the UK needs to be able to transform a headquarters that already exists into a headquarters that is fit to be able to fight Russia, should that happen.
Susie, these are wargaming exercises seemingly serving to show how much more reliance we need to have on the technology and how much more money needs to be spent on defence.
Well, exactly. We know the future wars are not going to be... I think what's happening in Russia and Ukraine at the moment is a huge demonstration of where things are changing. Russia is fighting an old-fashioned war, throwing people at a problem, having conscripts and just throwing them up against the guns and bombing people from air raids, whereas Ukraine has evolved and is sending out drones. It is keeping people back from the front line, and it is sending out drones that are killing 35,000 troops of Russia every week. And it's something that they just can't... They're not fighting this on the same battleground anymore. They're fighting two different wars, and clearly they've decided that if there is going to be a future conflict, then we're going to have to be far more electronic, far more drone-focused. And I think what's happening in Ukraine is going to be informing our own military far more as well.
And we've heard from Yvette Cooper. She was at the Foreign Ministers' conference, and she's saying within NATO, Europe and UK must do more so we properly protect our citizens. Russia's more unpredictable, and the post-Cold War peace dividend is gone.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's a tricky thing for the UK because the UK doesn't exactly have a small defence budget. It has quite a large one, but it's just spectacularly bad at managing it very well. It manages to spend it on all sorts of things that turn out to be obsolete by the time they actually come into service. And, you know, one of the things that the UK likes to tell itself, at the very least, is that it goes for sort of gold standard stuff. It goes for the very best in class. But the problem with that, and this is actually to touch on what Susie was saying about Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine obviously being a much smaller nation, and it's taking on Western weaponry, which tends to be of much better quality than the stuff that the Russians can conjure up. But this is, in fact, a sort of a reflection of the Second World War between the Nazis and the Soviets, which is, OK, the Nazis had far superior military technology, their soldiers were far better trained, and the Russians just kept throwing things at them, and they could produce hundreds of tanks for every one German tank that was produced. And that's the other side of the divide, which is when you move towards drone warfare, actually what is better? It's sort of the state-of-the-art drone, or the thing that costs about 50 quid that you can just mount explosives on the front of when it comes to mowing down troops. So this is a tricky thing for the UK, because we can turn our attention towards investing in, you know, the very best high-spec stuff that the Americans can produce. But is that necessarily what you want if what the Russians, or anybody else for that matter, is throwing at you is simply overwhelming numbers? And, you know, that's a difficult thing that actually we have to weigh up. We have to move with the times, but it's a gamble. Which direction are we going to go in, and do we just hope and pray that actually it's the right thing that we do? Yeah,
but updating, absolutely crucial, and it brings me to a story out today. The Red Cross will fly just 7 aircraft in Red Arrow, sorry. Did I say Red Cross? The Red Arrows will fly...
Not quite the same thing.
No, not the same thing at all. There they are. There they are, the Red Arrows. They're going to fly just 7 aircraft rather than 9 for most displays because the engines are just too old.
Those planes have been very old for a very long time, and they've been threatened with shutting down the whatever you want to call it, the unit, for many years. I mean, I was a defence reporter 20 years ago, and I think there was talk about it then, but it keeps going because everyone has a place in their heart for it, and because there is a place for it in terms of British soft power as well around the world. It's worth funding, and those jets don't cost a huge amount of money. The unit costs a lot of money, but it does a lot of good, and there's a lot of trade and stuff gets sold off the back of it too. A lot of armaments around the world. So it's worth doing, but we never have invested in it properly. As Benedict was saying, we never have invested in defence properly. We've always invested in the wrong thing, and the war that we think is happening next week, not the one 10 years down the road. And then it takes 20 years to get the bit of kit that we've just ordered up, which inevitably doesn't work when we do get it, like the Ajax tank.
Hopefully there will be investment in the Red Arrows, because, as you say, there's the place in our heart, sentimentality regarding the Red Arrows.
If the US can keep B-52s flying, surely we can keep the Red Arrows
we can keep Spitfires going. There's 1 Lank still going. Yeah. There's no reason we can't keep 9 Hawks in the air.
Right, you're going to start a campaign?
Yes.
OK. We heard it here first. Now, the England manager, Thomas Tuchel, has been defending his controversial World Cup squad. He says he has picked the best possible team, but his choices have certainly raised some eyebrows. Among the unexpected inclusions are 35-year-old Brentford midfielder Jordan Henderson and Al Ahly forward Ivan Toney, while Tottenham defender Jed Spence has made the squad despite suffering a broken jaw just 3 days ago in the game against Chelsea. Again, there is no room in the England squad for Real Madrid defender Trent Alexander-Arnold. And both Chelsea's Cole Palmer and Manchester City's Phil Foden are left out, having struggled far from form with their clubs this season. Well, Manchester United's Harry Maguire, who was also left out, has released a statement saying he's shocked and gutted. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris spoke to Thomas Tuchel about his controversial choices.
Thomas, you have your players you're taking to the World Cup now.
Yeah.
Really tough decisions you've had to take.
Yeah.
Barely a year or so in the job. How have you adapted to international football? Do you think, even with all your experience, you've changed tactically, on and off the pitch, to give you the best chance of success at the tournament?
You have just way less time with your team to build a team. That's actually what we're doing, and you try to do it within 3 days, and then there's a match, another 3 days, another match, and then your team is gone, which is very, very different from club football and what I was used to do. But I love the role, I love my players, I love the challenge that comes if you're coaching England. I'm proud to lead the team to the World Cup, and I'm fully committed. So yeah, now we had big decisions to make. We had to narrow the squad down to 26, which is in itself very difficult because there's so many good players, so many good personalities, so many talented guys out there. But we did it to our best knowledge and to our full belief. We want to arrive with a strong squad, with a strong team that is fully committed. And we got this. I'm excited now that it starts in 1 week, and finally we're in the plane and I have a team to coach.
A lot of the time it's you asking the players what you want of them. What do the players ask of you that can help best to deliver the success? And is it about protecting them, whether it's from the heat or particularly...
I cannot protect them from the heat. I would if I could. I think they want clarity. They want clarity, what you want us to do, what are the principles, how do we do, how do you want us to play, how do we press, how is the deep build-up, how do we attack? That is my experience. They want clarity, and even in international football, they want clarity fast, because they come from a lot of different ideas of playing football. They come from different clubs, so we need to buy into one idea. We cannot overload them with too many details in tactics. That's why, for me, a World Cup is very rarely a tactical tournament. It is about connecting. It's about building a strong bond, and then it's about having the right understanding of your role, that you might even select it as a starter or not, but you push your friend, you push your teammate on the same position, you push from the bench, you create the right spirit that is needed to overcome the hurdles in a very, very difficult and long tournament.
Quite controversial it's been received as, and what he's saying, which I think is a little bit of an insult actually, that he's choosing not the most talented players, but those that can make the sum of a team.
Yeah, so what he's not doing
is disrespectful to some players.
He's not shoehorning in all of the best talented forwards into a team and just throwing it and hoping that it works. One of the things about being a really big football nation like England is you do produce a lot of good players. Now, if that means that you have 5 players who all play in the number 10 role, which is, a forward position, and you got 5 of them, right, and they're all fantastic and they all play for Champions League teams, you can't actually shoehorn all 5 of them into the team. You have to maybe pick one and take a spare. So that means a couple of people are going to get left behind. And a problem that the England team has made for a very long time is it takes the big names, the big stars, the ones with the big endorsements and the fame and all of that, the famous go back to the golden generation, takes them all and it can't get a tune out of them. And that's a problem. And what I would also say about this is, another criticism of previous England managers is that they've still taken players to the World Cup on reputation. So you'll have, say, those 5 players who play in the number 10, and say X player is or has been the best in the world for the last 3 years, but he's been rubbish this year. But you take him anyway because he's been the best in the past, and that's where it falls apart. Now, in this particular instance, the controversial ones, Foden and Palmer, they've been left behind. They've been stars in the past, they've done fantastic well. They've been rubbish this year. There's no two ways about it. Look at where Chelsea are in the league. Cole Palmer, look how well he's performed. He's been appalling. Phil Foden has been appalling. And now there's this big hue and cry that they should go because they're big names. No, you want people who have worked hard, who've got there on merit, who are perhaps not at the most fashionable clubs, who are going to run through barbed wire for you because they're happy to be there as much as anything else, and this is their one chance. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Finally, we've got a manager who's prepared to say to the big names, you don't get in just because your name's Foden and you play for Man City.
Susie, do you think Thomas Tuchel has been brave or perhaps not following tradition and looking at history to make his pick?
I don't really care one way or the other. What I care about is the fact that this man is paid £5 million to make these decisions. And you've got to let him, therefore, make the decision. And if you think that it's the wrong decision, then find another one when his contract's up. But I don't care about the opinion of some whiny, overprivileged little millionaire who can kick a ball well, saying, no, I think I know best. I think I should have been in the team. And his mum coming out tweeting.
Are you talking about Harry Maguire?
My boy should have been in the team. It's not fair. Do you know what? You're all earning £1 million a second for kicking a ball around. Take the win. All right, and let the man who's getting paid £5 million to do this job. And if this is what he thinks, let him have a crack at it.
I hope Harry Maguire's mum's not watching.
Well, I don't care if she is. Crying about it on social media the second something goes your way does rather suggest that Thomas Tuchel might have had a point in not bringing him. Maybe he's not the best character.
You have to have some coherence and some cohesion in the team. You can't have all these little prima Maradona. You can't have all these phrases. You can't have this, a new thing I've just invented. It's lovely malapropism. You can't have these prima Maradonas who all think they're God, all trying to be in the number 10 spot at the same time, because I think I ought to be in the England squad. Get to bed, lad, and let the people who actually want to be there and who can play with other people well in a team, let them do it, you know?
Susie has spoken. Just very quickly, interesting observation in the Mirror. England coach Thomas Tuchel put the team first in choosing his World Cup squad, just like Sir Alf Ramsey did 60 years ago, says an expert, an authority on the 1966 hero. And we got results there, didn't we?
We're always looking for omens. We're always looking for parallels and hoping for the best. Listen, the odds are England aren't going to win. And if you can go into it with that attitude, then the only way is up. You can only be quietly impressed if maybe it does go the right way. Listen, Italy aren't there anymore. Nobody seems to be that good. Germany aren't particularly good. Spain had a bit of an iffy. Who knows? Who knows? But start out going, it's not going to be out.
I won't break into song. The only way is up. Coming up next, we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us.
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Well, according to the Financial Times, bond markets have taken comfort at Andy Burnham's reassurances that he would stick to the UK's fiscal operating rules were he to become Prime Minister. In turn, this has apparently calmed fears surrounding future interest rate rises. But the Mail takes a less optimistic view of a Burnham premiership, claiming he'd carry out a tax raid on Middle England. The Guardian hears the government made a pitch to the EU to restore a single market relationship for goods, but the union turned them down. Former Health Secretary Alan Milburn tells The Times Britain faces an economic catastrophe of worklessness ahead of his report into young people not in education, employment or training. The Telegraph reports that regional mayors could make use of new powers to charge holiday taxes of as much as £300. An anonymous victim of child sex crimes who was abused from the age of 12 has told The Express that police and care staff who failed her should be held criminally responsible. A commentator in the Mirror suggests England manager Thomas Tuchel's World Cup squad selection echoes the philosophy of his winning 1996 predecessor, Sir Alf Ramsey, as we discussed. The Eye reports that today's record heat is scheduled to continue, making Britain hotter than Africa and the Mediterranean. The Sun has a story concerning Katie Price's husband. And The Star pays tribute to the late TV presenter Judith Chalmers, saying, "Wish you were still here." So let's start with the FT, their front page story, bonds rally on Burnham fiscal vow. Benedict, take us into this.
So this is the news that basically Andy Burnham's, the prospect of Andy Burnham becoming Labour leader is not quite as terrifying as to international markets as previously feared. Of course, that was one of the major concerns, was that a leadership contest in the Labour Party wouldn't just be about the sort of the disruption, but that also any suggestion that the party might veer to the left might upset the bond markets and that might usher in a financial crisis. Of course, that's something that Nigel Farage has been talking about and saying that he's been hoping for some time. But that doesn't appear to be immediately on the cards, although, of course, Mr Burnham has not yet become an MP, let alone Labour leader, so I think we need to just bear that in mind. But I think that this is a sign, if not as much as anything else, that the party is acutely aware, and certainly Andy Burnham is acutely aware, that this isn't going to be a sort of a simple coronation, and that once he... If he gets into a position, rather, where he is able to stand and challenge for the leadership, there are going to be many demands placed on him, and not simply from the party. And it's going to be a difficult thing where he has to balance the demands of the party against external factors. And, of course, he will know full well what happened to Liz Truss when she came in and she listened to the whims of the party, or what she thought were the whims of the party, as opposed to the rest of the world, so speaking to her and saying, now, you can't do that. There are rules that you have to sort of go along with here. For the time being, he has suggested that he's not going to stray from the party's own fiscal plans. That has done a bit to calm people, because, of course, there was always that concern. But it's all a hypothetical for now, and, of course, these things can change pretty quickly and, for all sorts of reasons as well. So good news for him, but very much short-term respite, I think.
Yeah, data this week showing lower than expected inflation alongside a decline in oil prices over the week has made it less likely that the Bank of England will raise interest rates quickly. And Andy Burnham committing to the government's self-imposed borrowing limit.
Yeah, but there's a couple of really interesting points here I think that Benedict missed. First off, someone who is not an MP and who is not even said he's going to run to be Prime Minister has affected the bond market in our favour by saying the right thing, which means that the bond market and the banks and the systems think he's got a good chance of being Prime Minister. And they are reassured by the thing that he said. And the second is that he has said that there is space to be radical within Labour's 2024 election manifesto. Now, that means one of the things that he's going to, if he does get in and if he does go for leadership and if he does win it, one of the things he will immediately face is a call for a general election. But, of course, if you say you're going to stick within the 2024 manifesto, which is easy to do because it was so vague and said very little, you don't need to have a general election. And then you have 3 years before you do have to have that election. And there's been reporting this week saying that he's already thinking about his first 100 days and he's formulating policies for that if he were to get into that position. So all of this means that he's reassuring the markets, he's not going to move out of the manifesto, he's potentially not going to call a snap election, which he'll have a lot of pressure to do. But if he says he's going to stick within Labour's red lines, that still leaves you an awful lot of room for manoeuvre, because there are only a few things they actually said they were going to do in that manifesto, one of which was to bring in the Hillsborough law, which he met the Hillsborough families this week and said to them, yes, that's going to happen if I have anything to do with it when I get down to Westminster. So it does look like he's putting off the possibility of an election to 2029.
Yeah, so he's not bringing in a new mandate, therefore the calls for a general election
and it gives him
quelled.
3 years to do whatever he can and then go to the country and say, look what Manchesterism has achieved, if it all works that way, of course. And he avoids every pothole on the way to Westminster.
Well, let's move on to the Daily Mail, sticking with Burnham and this story regarding his tax raid on Middle England.
Well, yeah, this is the idea that he believes that there are taxes that you can levy on land and on assets and on property, and that a lot of this is going to be about sort of revaluing council tax, effectively. Now, to be clear, I think a lot of people recognise that a lot of local authorities are woefully underfunded and that a new way of doing that needs to be found. And I think also a lot of people would recognise that there's far too much value now stored in assets, in land, in property in this country, and that there's no real way to monetise that. That's great if you can do it, and, we wait to see whether or not he can do it, but it doesn't really touch the sides of all the other things, all the other structural issues that he can face. Now, let's say that he's able to do this in a way that doesn't massively upset many voters that he does actually need to keep on side. He might be surprised to discover that lots of people with assets do vote Labour. But let's say that he's able to do that. Does that actually have any real impact on the major things in this country that are causing structural stresses at the moment? One of which, of course, is energy. Another which, whether people like it or not, is still illegal migration. These are separate issues. And the thing is, he may well be able to sort of tinker around within the sort of the scope of the manifesto and say, well, look what I've done, X, Y, Z, if he's not able to tackle the big overarching issues that Starmer was elected on, saying, I'll do this that the Tories didn't. If he can't do it either, none of that's actually going to matter. Nobody's going to reward him for doing these things. And that might be very unfair, but that's the reality. It'll be the big-ticket issues that people will say, well, you haven't done that very well, have you?
But moving away from taxing the individual towards taxing land, is that going to be popular?
Well, one of the things, Daily Mail and the FT have got like two opposite sides of the coin here. The FT's got Burnham reassuring the markets because he's not going to be raising lots of taxes, and the Mail is going, oh, he's going to raise lots of taxes on houses and stuff. And what Burnham said about council tax was that it was regressive, i.e. that people pay council tax that doesn't necessarily reflect their personal wealth. They could own land and actually, and for example, in the south where property is worth more, but you don't have the cash to pay for it. I mean, where I live, my council tax has gone up from about 200 quid 10 years ago to nearly 300 quid now. And I am no richer than I was 10 years ago. I have to pay more for my services. And it's difficult to achieve that. And that kind of story's gone right across the country. And you have this awful system of a 25% discount for single adults. So if you're a widow, if you're a widower, you're still paying more council tax than if you were a partner. If you were a single parent, you're paying more council tax than the two parents who are down the road. It's very unreasonable. It does need reform, and loads of people think it needs reform. If he's going to reform it in such a way that people are happy with it, or going to pay something that's more reasonable, then great. But I can see there being farmers having issues with a land value tax, especially in the south. And if he's moving away from that and taxing assets more than income, actually, you'd have more cash in your pocket. But like you say, can he do that inside 3 years that people, in a way, would notice?
So here on screen now is a list of all the candidates who've declared so far in the Makerfield by-election representing Labour, Reform UK, the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, the official monster raving loony party, and Restore Britain. So let us move on to the Mirror and talk about Wes Streeting. He's setting out his leadership stall. What are we hearing from him, Benedict?
Well, he's promising to bring back. Well, I say promising. He's talking about bringing back Sure Start centres, and he's sort of focusing all of this. And I think this is curious. He's focusing it a lot on young people, on the next generation. In fact, I think he does say somewhere, I've lost it. The biggest thing I think that is broken in this country is that for the first time in modern history, the prospects of the next generation are worse than the last. That, to me, doesn't actually sound like a bid for this potential leadership contest. Now, interestingly, of course, he's already said that if Andy Burnham were to be on the ticket, that he might consider not standing for the leadership. That's what I think this is. I don't think it's actually him saying, I'm going to go for it this time. I think, now, Susie and I have been alluding to the difficulties that somebody, a prospective Prime Minister, might have over the next 3 years of getting things done, of actually sort of addressing the big structural issues. I think, in a sort of a Rishi Sunak kind of way, he's having to look a little bit further into the future and saying, it's not going to be me this time, but it might be me that next time. Now, what is it that we're talking about here? If we're talking about young people, where are young people tending to vote? A lot of them are going towards the Green Party right now. Well, it's possible that they might not come back within the scope of time that actually Andy Burnham may or may not become leader of the Labour Party. But if you're talking 3 years plus, maybe there is enough time there for the whole Zach Polanski edifice to come crumbling down, and maybe you can start to win those people back. So that's what I think this is. I think it's an appeal to younger people, and I think that there is going to be a lot of political capital to be made out of appealing to younger people who are not getting on the housing ladder, are not able to have children, are never going to be able to escape their university debt. And for those that didn't go to university, many of them are stuck on, cycles of unemployment. And of course, that's one of the things he's talking about here. There's a lot of potential there. I just think it's one with one eye, maybe on the medium term rather than the short term.
Susie, do you agree with Benedict that in that this is perhaps Wes Streeting saying it's not quite my time yet?
I think what you've got is, he's saying in here, interestingly, he keeps referring to Andy Burnham as Andy Burnham. He says his name in full every time he refers to him in the same sentence. So it's quite interesting. It's Andy Burnham, Andy Burnham, Andy Burnham all the whole time. But what you've got here are two people sort of setting out their stalls today, really, and what they would envisage in a leadership election where none of them really have declared yet, and it hasn't begun. But Burnham has been talking about change and making things different, and Streeting is talking about, we're going to do what you liked before under Tony Blair. There will be Sure Start. There will be, he's more on the right or the centre of the party. And so that he's setting out a stall which says, no, the Labour's glory days of the 90s, that's me, I'm a safe pair of hands. Whereas Burnham is, and he's trying to almost kind of push Burnham into being more of like the Jeremy Corbyn type, slightly radical candidate, whereas Burnham then is on Twitter tonight with his favourite playlist of elbow songs, trying to be centrist dad. It's really weird to be having a leadership contest where both of them are saying they're mates and want the other one to win whatever election they're going to go for, and also that they're totally against each other and also trying to push each other and dance like this around. It's a bizarre situation we're in. I'm glad I'm not Keir Starmer. He must be having a hell of a time.
Yes, we know that he is.
Poor Mrs Starmer doesn't know if she's coming or going.
The Daily Telegraph, Benedict, takes into this story £300 tax on your summer staycation. Mayor sees on new powers to charge overnight visitors hundreds for holidays.
Yes, as if we weren't talking about tax too much. Oh, you're not keen on that?
What?
You don't want to be taxed.
Sorry, it's just not. There is no £300 substantiated in the story.
Oh, that's good news. I don't have to pay £300 to go on a staycation.
It's a tourist tax that you get in lots of places.
I was going to say, this is one of those things where it is becoming the norm, increasingly in places where perhaps, there isn't as much wealth to begin with, so parts of the Mediterranean, parts of Italy, parts of Greece, where, they are particularly impoverished for great swathes of the year, and then for a couple of months of the year, thousands and thousands of people will rock up and they use everything and they don't necessarily spend enough in the economy to keep the whole thing going, A, but also, B, if you try to actually run a sort of municipality on that basis, everything's overcrowded and starts to break down. So it acts on the one hand of trying to raise enough money for local areas to support themselves, but also it tries to temper down the crowds. So it's worked for a lot of places, again, Italy, Spain, Greece. I wonder about the UK simply because it's been creeping up, the number of people that have been saying it. And I do wonder about this summer if the forecast increases in prices as a result of the Iran conflict do hit at that sort of crucial moment. Could we see a significant number of people deciding to stay home if, as has been foretold, there will be a lot of airline cancellations and they will turn around and go, sorry, you're going to have to stay here. Then all of a sudden you do have an opportunity, if you are a tourist hotspot and you're not perhaps sort of on the usual beaten track, to raise a little bit more money, which I think is interesting given, of course, what we were talking about earlier, which was potential reforms to council tax. Lots of local areas don't have a lot of money right now. Lots of local businesses are struggling. Might not be the worst idea. It might be considered a little sneaky, but make hay while the sun shines.
The article saying as many as 10 of England's 14 regional mayors are planning or considering implementing this overnight visitor levy. Let's leave it there because we're going to talk about UFOs now. A second batch of previously classified files on alleged UFO sightings have been released by the US government. They reveal reports of unexplained green orbs, discs and fireballs. The files, more than 200 of them, relate to what's described as unidentified anomalous phenomena. Easy for you to say, with the US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth saying it's time the American people see the documents for themselves. The US has also published several clips of NASA audio as part of the release. Let's take a listen to Aurora 7 pilot Scott Carpenter describing what he witnessed on a Project Mercury mission back in 1962.
I have the more of the white particles in view below the capsule. They appear to be traveling exactly my speed. There is one drifting off. It's going faster than I am, as a matter of fact. I haven't seen the great numbers of these particles, but I've seen a few of them. Their motion is random. They look exactly like snowflakes to me.
You spooked?
No, I've read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I know exactly what's going on. We're at the unfashionable end of the galaxy, and these are what's known as buzzers. Young, sort of teenage aliens who just think it's fun to turn up and just go past a plane or to land in a field and make a silly crop circle and walk around in front of someone who will never be believed going beep, 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 and just make them look stupid.
You've got 5 seconds.
I'm really
5
happy.
seconds.
Yeah, we're the alien equivalent of the people banging the rocks together. So even if they are aliens, they don't really mind.
Let's go and play with the monkeys. That's what they've all said.
Exactly.
Let's go and upset the monkeys.
Thank you both. More from Thomas Tuchel on his high-profile emissions from his World Cup squad coming up. Do stay with us.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
How are you feeling?
I am angry.
It is an anti-woman agenda. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
Sky News, get the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her.
Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
OK, nothing to see here, drama over, full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Time now to catch up on all of the sports news with David.
How would you describe James Milner, the person?
Boring.
I went there probably thinking the same as everyone else, the boring James Milner, anything but.
Dry English humour.
He's always the last man standing on a night out.
He's got another side to him.
Doesn't drink, but he's there to the end. If you leave early, you're getting stick.
Obviously the parody account got set up.
It was one pre-season, it came out. Whoever it is, we still don't know.
He countered that, didn't he? Unassuming, humble, great fun, great to be around, incredible company.
A very unique player and a unique person.
James is a wonderful player, an outstanding footballer, but players get linked consistently here.
He knows what the club thinks about him, and we will wait for his decision.
I had 2 years left, and I was looking to stay at the club when contract didn't come, and then eventually a contract came, and it was effectively a pay cut. You know, in the end, the club offered something which was probably at the time when I'd made my mind up was right at the end, whereas the mindset originally was to stay. It got to a point and it was like, well, might be better off going.
I think at that time, it would have been coming to the end of Steven Gerrard's time, hearing that James Milner was going to become available because he hadn't renewed with City. And he was certainly, you know, right at the top of our list of key targets to go after. I got a phone call from Matthew who said James would like you to come out to his house and just spend some time with you, which I'd never kind of had that before. I'd met with players and agents, obviously for lots of different deals, but James was very keen that I went out and spent some time out at his house with him and Amy, his wife. And I felt like I and Liverpool Football Club were being interviewed by James.
I know how I'm going to be when I go there. I'm going to give absolutely everything to whatever club I'm playing for. I'm going to give them everything I have every single day on and off the field. For me, it's what's your intentions and what's the plan, and you know, you're saying this to get me there, but is this going to happen?
Rodgers has spent more than £70 million on transfers this summer. One player who's arguably impressed most on tour, though, didn't cost a penny.
I've been fortunate to play for a lot of big clubs in my career, and with that comes pressure, and that's what you want. You want to be playing at the top level with and against the best players.
Millie's such a good laugh around the dressing room, always one of the lads, but when it's time to be serious and time to work, and then he's on another level really, so he had a really good balance. He's very much black or white, to be fair.
He set the standards in training. I think I seen that from the first day I trained with him. He was the one that demanded standards. He was the one that if anyone wasn't quite at it, they would get told that they weren't every day that I
Good news for you now. It's the weather, believe it or not.
looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the hot, sunny weather is going to stay with us over the bank holiday weekend and well into next week. Over time, however, the highest temperatures will shift westward with North Sea coast picking up an onshore breeze. For now, rain over western Scotland will clear away northward, leaving a narrow rain belt to travel southward overnight. There's a chance this may bring some thundery outbreaks to Lincolnshire, East Anglia and the southeast around the dawn. Low cloud and sea mist will return to western coasts. It's a mild night for all, with temperatures holding in the mid-teens Celsius. In the morning, any remaining rain in the southeast will clear away.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up, the family of Virginia Giuffre say the police investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over allegations of sexual misconduct has given them hope.
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Tonight on The Wrap, the family of Virginia Giuffre tells Sky News they've been given hope by a UK police investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over allegations of sexual misconduct.
It was a good news for us today, so I think we're very hopeful.
NATO's European leaders told bluntly the organisation has to be of value to the United States. The England football manager, Thomas Tuchel, defends the controversial choices in his World Cup squad.
We did it to our best knowledge and to our full belief. We want to arrive with a strong squad, with a strong team that is fully committed, and we got this.
Plus, a bank holiday heat wave with today the hottest day of the year so far. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the investigative journalist Susie Boniface and the political commentator Benedict Spence. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers from 1:30. Good evening. Welcome, Susie and Benedict, even though I mispronounced your surname. We begin tonight with the family of Virginia Giuffre telling Sky News they've been given hope by a UK police investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over allegations of sexual misconduct. The former prince has denied any wrongdoing. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock has this report.
No sign of Andrew at his home on the King's private Sandringham estate. Out of sight, but still in the spotlight. And the investigation into his conduct still in the minds of the family of his accuser, Virginia Giuffre.
To hear that the potential of investigating sexual crimes, that is huge. It is more than what we're seeing here in this country, and it actually gives us hope.
After years of frustration, they have optimism and a fresh plea for potential victims to speak out.
We understand what it takes to come forward, the bravery, the courage. But I would also say that the world is listening in a way that it wasn't listening before.
Also from the US, politicians renewing their call for Andrew to come to Congress.
What is very discouraging and very disappointing is the fact that this is not being done on our side of the pond here in the US. They deserve to have justice. They deserve to be heard. And we're going to do everything that we can to ensure that they get the justice that they deserve.
Andrew has always strongly denied any wrongdoing.
Charlotte and Lily, if you're listening, make sure you're on time, please. Yes. Make sure you're not fighting over who's listening to what.
On the Isles of Scilly, there was lots of chat from Prince William on breakfast radio.
Charlotte particularly is obsessed by Taylor Swift.
But not a word about his uncle.
It was amazing.
It's now 3 months since this infamous image. He was the first royal to be arrested for hundreds of years. The investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor continues with a wide scope, including possible sex crimes and corruption, connected with his time as an international trade envoy. His arrest was triggered by revelations in the Epstein files, the convicted paedophile once his close friend. It is a scandal which, by association, threatens the reputation of the royal family. And it's a damaging drama the King does not enjoy. Here in Stratford to watch The Tempest, a rather telling tale of feuding brothers and a duke in exile. The police investigation into Andrew is moving and evolving, but this is a complex case and could last months, even years. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Susie, what's your view in terms of whether this adds further pressure on the King and the royal family at large?
I think there's a couple of long-term risks to the monarchy. The first is that just generally having this within its ranks is not great. Whether it's proved or not proved, the allegations are enough to taint royalty and to make everyone feel slightly seedy and unhappy about
the whole situation, obviously. But I think on a longer-term thing, you know, we have a monarchy in this country which has secured for itself a loss of exemptions from parliamentary and public scrutiny. You can't make freedom of information requests about anything that might affect royal communications or finances or this kind of stuff. And getting anything out of any organisation that has a connection to royalty, whether it's part of the duchy. I mean, you know, Prince William's there on Heart FM and the Isles of Scilly. He owns the Isle of Scilly. Literally, Heart FM came to him. Or if you want to just find out about funding or find out about taxation, all this kind of stuff, it depends if they want to tell you it, and you cannot get in there. If you have a police investigation, you have a royal who's arrested, you have the data gathering you have to have now in a big criminal investigation, then you will find that there's lots of stuff that was behind the palace walls that starts becoming public knowledge, that starts to be discussed, that parliamentary committees start to examine. And it's the kind of thing where once the lid is off that box, then there'll be other things. There'll be ways to access similar information, private, personal information about other members of the royal family, and it will never be able to go back to the secrecy that we've had up till now. So there's a big long-term risk, I think, for the overall scrutiny of the royals.
Benedict, do you think that the veil has dropped now?
I mean, I think it's been coming unstuck for a very long time, ultimately. I think that, you know, the more that we move into a digital era, it's been a lot harder for the royal family to sort of keep that pretense away and sort of keep the workings behind the curtains going. I do think that this scandal has obviously dragged much more of it kicking and screaming into the sunlight than perhaps they would have liked, but it was, you know, an inevitable process ultimately. You know, we all know far more about the royal family than we did, even if we don't necessarily know about all of the inner workings, as sort of Susie has been talking about. But, you know, certainly this is, I think, uncovered a certain seediness about, you know, I wouldn't even say necessarily the royal family, but just the sort of the goings-on in certain elements of society that sort of people would once upon a time hint at or suspect, but actually it's sort of been blown open here. And the very fact that whilst he was Prince Andrew, he was elevated to these sorts of circles was precisely because these sorts of things happened amongst very powerful people, and he was used as a conduit to get to those powerful people. And so certainly I think that element has become, you know, has been unveiled to people in a way that, as I say, many suspected but didn't quite have the hard evidence to prove.
Yeah, and Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor denies all the allegations levelled at his door, but we heard there from Virginia Giuffre's family saying that victims are now being listened to in a way that previously they weren't. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, and I think you know, the change in social mores that we've had in the last sort of 10, 15 years after the Me Too movement, Jimmy Savile, Harvey Weinstein, and other cases, big high-profile cases, has meant that people do give more credence to victims. The Rochdale grooming gangs is one of those examples where I think 20 years ago people didn't think those kind of girls could be believed, and now people think those kind of girls should be believed. There has been a change, a sea change in how we deal with these things, which is all for the good. I'm interested just to see that it's, you know, it's the high profile, it's the people who can be got at, the ones who are famous, the ones who are celebrities, the ones who can be pulled down, that we go after. Most sex abuse, most crimes like that happen within families and within very small networks amongst people that, you know, you don't normally would suspect and that can't get pulled down. And of course, our criminal justice system is such that some of those offences are technically legalised because you're never going to get to face justice for some of them sometimes.
Can't say they were effectively legalised.
No, but, you know, like rape, for example, you know, if you want to go and make an allegation of rape, the chance of it coming to court once you've made that allegation is getting smaller and smaller, which means that more and more rapists do get away with it, which is a form of effectively legalising it in a way, because you're not
disagree with that characterisation of it. Just to go back to Virginia Giuffre's family, they're saying that, you know, this UK police investigation has given them hope, and perhaps, you know, the UK is streaks ahead of anything in the United States.
Yeah, and it's a curious thing, because on the one hand, I think Virginia Giuffre has been sort of almost a side character in all of this, which is sort of incredible given the allegations and given, sadly, what has happened to her very sort of tragic life and her story, which was central, and at the same time, it's not about her, it's been about the high-profile individuals. And so it is rather sad that she has been, I wouldn't say forgotten, but not entirely sort of taken as an active central character in all of this and a victim in the same way that she might otherwise have been. It had been a very different kind of story. And, you know, her relatives have had to sort of live with this all the time, the ongoing allegations, the media furore over all of it. At the heart of this, there is a victim, and there are many other victims as well, who are almost just accessories to the fact of what's been going on with rich and powerful people. So it's very promising for them to have that hope that this might actually go somewhere. But also I think it's a very interesting revelation about the direction that the UK is going as opposed to the United States. I mean, as Susie says, there's lots of things that have been uncovered in this country over the last 10 to 15 years that actually people simply didn't believe. And I think the grooming gang scandal is a very good example of that. People literally didn't believe it, and actually it comes out more and more that this has been going on. Lots more of those sorts of things do happen, and people slowly are being held to account in a way that they're not in the United States. And you wouldn't have thought that would be the case, because Britain is supposed to be the class society with privilege, inbuilt, this, that and the other, old ways of doing things, very opaque ways of going about things, whereas the United States is all supposed to be about equal rights in front of the law and everybody having an equal chance. And it's really not the case at all. Actually, if you're powerful in the United States and you're wealthy, you are far more protected, it seems, from your, from justice than you are in the UK, where even members of the royal family can't escape scrutiny.
OK, well, let's stay with the United States, but on another story now. And America has once again criticised NATO, saying it has to be of value to the United States. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said that denying America the use of NATO bases had undermined the alliance.
I understand NATO is valuable to Europe, and it should be. It also has to be valuable to the United States. So we always have to make that argument in every administration, in every era. And that's what we're in the process of doing now, is explaining, this is the value of NATO to the United States. It's related to that is what our force posture is within that alliance, what our contributions are. So obviously, one of the things that I've always used, and I've long been an advocate for NATO in my time in the Senate, and one of the arguments I always made was that these bases in the region provided us logistical options that we wouldn't otherwise have. And when some of those bases are denied to you during a conflict that we're involved in, then you question whether that value is still there. So that's going to have to be discussed. There's no doubt about it. I think there's also going to have to be some focus on how, a year after the meeting at The Hague, how much progress has been made in terms of the increased contributions. There are some countries that have doubled their defense spending over the last few years. There are others that are still lagging. In the end, the goal is to have a NATO that is strong, and the stronger our NATO allies are, the stronger NATO is going to be.
So Marco Rubio there, really not very flattering about NATO, really characterising NATO as to how useful it is to the United States of America.
Well, completely misunderstanding what NATO is. It's not supposed to be there for America. It's not, an extension of America's power around the world. It's there for the North Atlantic. Right? It is there it is a union of nations, and if you want NATO's support when you're going off to go and do a little war that you didn't have to have in Iran, the best thing to do is to ask the other countries if they mind before you start. And they would probably say, well, if you want to do that, Mr. Trump, then you can do that, but have you thought about the Strait of Hormuz first? Right? The whole idea that not cooperating with Trump is what's undermined NATO is to forget the previous 10 years of Trump banging on about how awful NATO is, which is what's undermined it, which is why all the people in NATO are going, mate, well, should we come and help you? And the only time that Article 5 of NATO was triggered was after September the 11th, that everyone did go and help America. But NATO is there for all the countries, not just the one. And the fact that the Secretary of State genuinely thinks NATO's only main selling point is because America can get its planes a bit further over there. That's not what it's for, Marco, you great prawn.
Thankfully, she said prawn.
Or shrimp for the American listeners.
OK, yes. Yeah. The translation, the US translation.
I mean, it's also, I think, that whole sort of... that whole spiel, it also betrays that there is a misunderstanding, or perhaps not a misunderstanding, but an attempt to re-augment what NATO is, which is that it is a defensive alliance. And, of course, the great justification that Russia has had all of these years for going into Ukraine and menacing other countries is that NATO is not a defensive alliance. It is a very progressive one that seeks to expand its own borders. If you're going to sit there, the United States, and go, you should be helping us whenever we're going into anywhere else, if you're the countries that are diametrically opposed to NATO, say Russia, maybe to a degree China as well, you're going to be sat there going, so what is this, guys?
Yeah.
Is it what this whole pretense that you have about, you're only there just in case we do something, doesn't seem to be the case. So it's a little bit foolish for them to be quite so bombastic about this. Now, there are justified criticisms of other NATO countries when it comes to their own defence spending, when it comes to alignment on defence. I mean, try and get all of the EU countries into a room and get them to agree on a unified defence policy when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. They can't do it. They're hapless. Fine, the US is justified in criticising them on that. But when it comes to actively participating in wars which involve you going overseas and attacking somebody else, whether you think that conflict is right or wrong, that's not the point of a defensive alliance. And it is a bit rich to then turn around to the European nations, who you have also pointed out don't have the capacity to do this, and say, and with this lack of capacity, you really ought to be helping us out.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
And also, Iran's nowhere near the North Atlantic. It's nowhere near NATO's territory. It wasn't a threat to NATO.
That's a bit of a point there. But do you think that this is the beginning of the end for NATO? And it's been some time coming, because we know Donald Trump has never been a fan.
No, because everyone else in NATO is just going, all right, America, shut up. And they're carrying on having their own conferences and having their own meetings and helping Ukraine by themselves. And yes, it's harder to do because they haven't got the finances and they don't have so much infrastructure, but they are finding a way to get through the next few years, clearly without much American support. And Trump's only got how long left on planet Earth? I don't know. Maybe he'll be in his 5th term by the time he finally shuffles off the mortal coil. But the fact is that he's not going to be there forever. NATO will continue in some form or another because you still need that defensive alliance, and Putin is going to continue pushing the borders. So those nations are still going to want to form together in a defensive union. That's never going to stop. Whether or not a future America, wants to be as supportive as previous Americas have done is up for debate. But, it will survive Trump.
So overall, your predictions is that NATO will survive?
Yes.
You agree, Bender?
Unless it's, I don't know, a President Vance, maybe, or a President Rubio.
Not
Who knows?
happen.
I mean, you said it's not going to happen, but everybody said it wasn't going to be Donald Trump twice, and it happened.
In public
that is a whole new discussion. But we are going to talk about the weather next, because it's hotter than Barbados. That's the forecast for England this bank holiday weekend. Can you believe it? Heathrow hit 26.9 degrees earlier, the hottest day of the year so far, with temperatures forecast to reach a new May record of 33 degrees on Monday. Well, the UK Health Security Agency has issued an amber heat health alert, which means significant impacts are likely across health and care services covering the East Midlands, West Midlands, the East of England, London and the South East.
It is quite good timing, isn't it, from most people's point of view, and also with half-term across many parts of the country as well. Lots of fine weather will continue into next week. It's all due to high pressure. We have high pressure sitting around the UK, and with that then there's loads of sun around. The days are getting long. The solstice is only a few weeks away. And with that, then we have the heating. And some of that heating's happened over the near continent. And then with a slight shift in our wind direction, we're dragging in some of that warmer air. So it's all due to the high pressure, which is bringing lots of fine sunny weather. Not everywhere at the moment, but as we go through the next few days and into next week, the warmth, the heat, it is going to become widespread. So even parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, which will have a fresher weekend, will turn warmer by the middle of next week.
We could see the hottest May Day bank holiday on record, possibly 33.
And every time you get a heat wave, we have the same stories. I mean, I live in Kent. We get people who are going in the nearest river in a lock and drowning. And we get people going down to Camber Sands, especially from that London. They go down to Camber Sands in Sussex and they think, oh, it's a nice, lovely flat bit of beach. It's perfectly safe. It's not. It's really dangerous and you get full of riptides. So if you're thinking about going out this weekend, anybody, and you're going swimming, don't go near a lock or a weir, for goodness sake, in a canal or a river. And if you're going down to Camber Sands or the seaside and you get caught in a riptide, swim parallel to the beach, across the top rip, and then you go back into the beach again. Don't swim against the tide if you're getting carried out to sea. Swim across the rip.
Fantastic safety
Parallel
advice.
to the beach.
But, I mean, it's very true, though, this hot weather, as much as it's appreciated, it does sometimes cause people to do silly things.
It does, and I think that people need to stop treating warm weather in the summer as some sort of anomaly. Actually, I think that people should be prepared for the fact that in the summer it does get quite hot. It appears to be getting hotter as we go on. That perhaps just needs to be a little bit more in the way of public information, because actually people do this every single year. They go out and they make the same mistakes, and you suspect that's because nobody's ever thought to tell them. Because it happens sort of nearby where we are, and in the south of England as well, where you can find reservoirs. People jump into reservoirs and they don't realise, oh, good Lord, it's quite cold and quite deep, and there are no, there's no life jacket or anything like that, and nothing's very, This is part of the issue, isn't it? And on top of that, of course, you get the people who go out and they overheat and they get heat stroke and they don't hydrate properly. And you kind of have to think to yourself, well, this is kind of basic biology that when the sun goes up, you learn to hydrate. Apparently not. So I think it would be worthwhile, perhaps, if people just started to take the summer less as a shock. A bit like when it gets quite cold in the winter, people go, oh, good Lord, now my heating bill's going up. Yeah. It happens. It's the seasons, and they are getting a little more extreme.
I know, but I think it says something about Britain's eternal optimism, in a way, that we forget what happened last time, and we'll just go out and do it again. This is a nice surprise.
We assume it'll always be 13
and... It's the same with the winter, and it's the same with the football of the World Cup, and go, oh, maybe we'll win this time. There's this blind optimism that it'll all be better next time, it'll just happen again, it'll be completely different.
I think we should reserve the optimism for the football, though.
No.
Of all things, absolutely not.
That's so defeatist, Also,
quarterfinals on penalties.
Sun cream. We didn't add on sun cream as well. Very important.
But it's going to be of no use to you if you're drowning in a weir.
It might, but you don't know that. I mean,
no, because if someone's trying to pull you out, they're going to slip.
Oh, so actually, what you should be saying is don't put on the sun cream if you're going in the weir.
No, we're not giving that.
This is getting a little bit complex.
Yes, it is. Coming up. Who's in and who's out? Thomas Tuchel names his 26-man England squad for the World Cup with more than a few surprises.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
You are watching The Wrap. Now, the England manager, Thomas Tuchel, has been defending his controversial World Cup squad. He says he has picked the best possible team, but his choices have certainly raised some eyebrows. Amongst the unexpected inclusions are 35-year-old Brentford midfielder Jordan Henderson and Al Ahly forward Ivan Toney, while Tottenham defender Jed Spence has made the squad despite suffering a broken jaw just 3 days ago in the game against Chelsea. Again, there is no room in the England squad for Real Madrid defender Trent Alexander-Arnold, and both Chelsea's Cole Palmer and Manchester City's Phil Foden are left out, having struggled for form with their clubs this season. Well, Manchester United's Harry Maguire, who was also left out, has released a statement saying he's shocked and gutted. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris spoke to Thomas Tuchel about his controversial choices.
Thomas, you have your players you're taking to the World Cup now.
Yeah.
Really tough decisions you've had to take.
Yeah.
Barely a year or so in the job. How have you adapted to international football? Do you think, even with all your experience, you've changed tactically, on and off the pitch, to give you the best chance of success at the tournament?
You have just way less time with your team to build a team. That's actually what we're doing, and you try to do it within 3 days, and then there's a match, another 3 days, another match, and then your team is gone, which is very, very different from club football and what I was used to do. But I love the role, I love my players, I love the challenge that comes if you're coaching England. I'm proud to lead the team to the World Cup, and I'm fully committed. So yeah, now we had big decisions to make. We had to narrow the squad down to 26, which is in itself very difficult because there's so many good players, so many good personalities, so many talented guys out there. But we did it to our best knowledge and to our full belief. We want to arrive with a strong squad, with a strong team that is fully committed. And we got this. I'm excited now that it starts in 1 week, and finally we're in the plane and I have a team to coach.
A lot of the time it's you asking the players what you want of them. What do the players ask of you that can help best to deliver the success? And is it about protecting them, whether it's from the heat or particularly...
I cannot protect them from the heat. I would if I could. I think they want clarity. They want clarity, what you want us to do, what are the principles, how do we do, how do you want us to play, how do we press, how is the deep build-up, how do we attack. That is my experience. They want clarity, and even in international football they want clarity fast, because they come from a lot of different ideas of playing football. They come from different clubs, so we need to buy into one idea. We cannot overload them with too many details in tactics. That's why for me a World Cup is very rarely a tactical tournament. It is about connecting, it's about building a strong bond, and then it's about having the right understanding of your role, that you might even select it as a starter or not, but you push your friend, you push your teammate on the same position, you push from the bench, you create the right spirit that is needed to overcome the hurdles in a very, very difficult and long tournament.
Right, we already know that Susie prefers rugby.
Yes.
So we won't come to you first.
Right, what do I do with that?
Benedict, I'm going to turn my back on her. What do you think of Thomas Tuchel's choices?
Listen, I think that it's always a very difficult job being the England manager, because you're on a hiding to nothing before you begun, and everybody's got an opinion about how the best player from their favourite team deserves to go. And I think a lot of that is what's been going on here. A lot of people are very upset that Cole Palmer or Phil Foden aren't going because they're big-name players and they sell lots of shirts and all that sort of thing. But the reality is they've not been very good this year. Lots of English footballers actually haven't been very good this year. It's been a particularly fallow year for Premier League football. And a lot of people who've not been performing don't get to go. And it's a strange thing. It's a strange concept that sport might be meritocratic, but actually often it is. Trent Alexander-Arnold went to Real Madrid because he thought he was going to be the best right-back in the world and win the Ballon d'Or. It's not gone very well for him. Whoops, he doesn't get in the squad. And instead, somebody like Valentino Livramento gets in because he's putting in the hard graft at Newcastle. It's not flashy, it's not spectacular. He doesn't get to call himself a Galactico, but he does the job. And ultimately, that's kind of what I think a lot of England fans would like, is that the players do the job.
Benedict, let's just... we were going to take you to SpaceX Starship, the upgraded Starship V3, which is due to blast off. The count was just stopped, but it has now restarted. So this is a debut test flight from Texas. They're planning to launch the 12th Starship rocket on a high-stakes test flight, attempting to debut several upgrades to its next generation spacecraft, and this coming as Elon Musk, the space company, nears a record-breaking public listing. Listen in.
4, 3, ignition. We have liftoff.
Pitching downrange.
Booster Raptor, chamber pressure nominal.
All right, we are T plus 30 seconds into flight, seeing 33 out of 33 Raptor 3 engines on booster
That never
V3,
ceases to be impressive, a rocket about to leave the atmosphere. And this is the most powerful rocket ever built, the Starship V3 mega rocket, which is seemingly successfully taken off. Benedict, your thoughts?
I mean, as you say, yeah, never ceases to impress. I mean, whatever else you might think of Elon Musk, that company, SpaceX, is doing unbelievable things. To what end it does them, nobody's quite sure. But the rate at which it's able to churn out these launches and improve on each rocket and the engines, it's remarkable. It's a remarkable feat of engineering. You know, the meeting of so many brilliant minds within that company. The future for SpaceX, I think, is sort of, it's phenomenal. I have no idea how big it could get, but he's going to do what he's been saying he's going to do. He's going to get them to Mars within a pretty short space of time. And, you know, frankly, I'm okay with that, because, you know, lots of people sort of talk about spaceflight. I'm actually fine with a private individual doing it rather than necessarily coming out of general taxation. The speed at which actually they are making progress, it's just unbelievable, given where they were just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we're watching there the world's largest and most powerful rocket, part of the space race, as Benedict was saying, to eventually go to Mars, Susie.
Yeah, you know what? When all the NASA developments in the 60s and the moonshots and the space race we had during the Cold War, there were loads of technological developments that sort of filter through to us. You know, ballpoint pens and all sorts of marvellous stuff, thermal blankets, things like this. And I haven't noticed anything yet that's a benefit from Elon Musk's personal space race, his own bid to get to Mars. Maybe if they do get to Mars, he'll be on the first rocket and then it won't come back. And that'll be our benefit. We'll be able to chalk that one up as one for humankind.
You were doing so well, and then you spoilt it.
I'm happy for him to go to Mars. I just don't want him to return.
Shall we see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers? Yes, I think we shall. So, according to the Financial Times, bond markets have taken comfort at Andy Burnham's reassurances that he would stick to the UK's fiscal operating rules were he to become Prime Minister. But the Mail takes a less optimistic view of a Burnham premiership, claiming he'd carry out a tax raid on Middle England. The Telegraph reports that regional mayors could make use of new powers to charge holiday taxes of as much as £300. The Guardian hears that the government made a pitch to the EU to restore a single market relationship for goods, but the union turned them down. Former Health Secretary Alan Milburn tells The Times Britain faces an economic catastrophe of worklessness ahead of his report into young people not in education, employment or training. An anonymous victim of child sex crimes who was abused from the age of 12 has told The Express that police and care staff who failed her should be held criminally responsible. The Mirror suggests Thomas Tuchel's World Cup squad selection echoes that of the 1966 England World Cup winners. The Eye reports that today's record heatwave is scheduled to continue, making Britain hotter than Africa and the Mediterranean. The Sun has a story concerning Katie Price's husband. And The Star pays tribute to the late television presenter Judith Chalmers, saying, "Wish you were still here." So let's start with the FT. Bond markets reassured by Burnham. And this is based on the story that previously they were having the jitters as believing that Andy Burnham isn't market-friendly, but seemingly this story has turned round and there's been some buoyancy in the markets on the basis that they, well, suggesting to them that he may be Prime Minister.
Yeah, and that's because Burnham has turned around and said that he is going to stick within the rules that the Labour Party have set out, that the current government has set out, if he were to, say, somehow stumble into the role of Prime Minister, which he's absolutely not going for, but, you know, who knows, who could possibly predict these things. That had been one of the major concerns, obviously, over the stability of the government and what direction it might decide to veer into, how far left or to the centre is it going to be. It had caused a lot of unease, shall we say, in the international markets. And I think it was very important, actually, for Andy Burnham, given what we suspect may happen, even though he hasn't necessarily said it's going to happen, that it is not a sort of a Liz Truss-like situation where a new Prime Minister comes in and spooks the horses and actually makes everything a little bit more volatile. That had been a real concern. I don't think actually so much to do with Burnham himself. I think that there have been more concerns that if it was just somebody broadly to the left of the party, and that might have been Angela Rayner or somebody else, that might happen. So I think, obviously, with that in mind, it was always going to be very important for Burnham to set out a stall, which was, yes, I'm promising to fix things, I am promising change, but I'm not going to do it in such a manner that absolutely terrifies you all, that I don't know how to keep any sort of fiscal discipline, and there's going to be borrowing left, right and centre, and I'm not going to cut anything. So, you know, it's a temporary reprieve, I think, and obviously if you can sort of carry on in that direction, it might be very good if somebody, say, wanted to give him a slightly more hefty job.
If the markets are calmed by the fact that he's saying he's going to stick to Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules, then that begs the question, why would you think of changing the Prime Minister or the government anyway?
Well, it also means that he's like the anti-Liz Truss. You know, if Liz Truss can cause the bond market to go absolutely haywire when she comes into power, then he can maybe make it a little bit... They've had the best day they've had since 2023. Just because someone who is not an MP yet and who has not declared a wish to in any kind of leadership election has said he doesn't want to change anything in the manifesto, which he is currently standing on in Makerfield. So the bond markets clearly think he's got a chance of being Prime Minister, and they are happy that he's not going to do these things. But it's more interesting to me, I think, that he's saying that there's space within the 2024 manifesto in which to do some of the radical things that he says Labour needs to do. Firstly, that's because the manifesto was incredibly vague and there were very few definite things that Starmer did say he would or wouldn't do in there, so there's lots of room for manoeuvre within the red lines. And secondly, it suggests to me that Burnham is not thinking about calling an instant snap election and to have his own radical manifesto he's going to present to the country. It sounds to me like he's intending, and we've seen some reporting earlier this week about his first 100 days and some policies coming into line about that. Sounds to me like he's intending to, if he can get to office, to get in there and make some changes, but stick to the current manifesto, thereby avoiding any calls for a general election because you're not going to change taxes, you're not going to do anything that you weren't supposed to start with, and get through to 2029, and then, with whatever he's been able to do in that time, then go to the country. I'd be interested to know if Wes Streeting is intending to do something similar, or whether he'd be more like to call a snap election, perhaps.
But mandate, going to stick to the mandate for now, Benny.
Well, we've got a lovely big fat majority. Why would one want to waste it?
Should we tell you about the rest of the candidates who've declared so far in the Makerfield by-election? Representing Labour, Reform UK, the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, the official monster raving loony party, and Restore Britain. Coming up next, we'll have much more from tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us.
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
You are watching The Wrap. Susie and Benedict still with us. Let's take a look at the eye inside, page 6 to 7. And this story really about the perception gap, as it were, asking the question whether reform would get more credit for cutting net migration than Labour.
I think this is a tricky thing because, you know, we were talking just before the break about what, say, Andy Burnham, were he to become Prime Minister, or, say, at West Streeting, might do in terms of triggering a snap election or not, or saying, you know, we're going to act within the manifesto and just sort of continue with what we have. Then it becomes an issue of the time that you have on the table. That would give, say, Andy Burnham, hypothetically, 3 years before the next general election, rather than 5 if he called a general election and somehow won it. The problem then becomes, do you have enough time in 3 years to actually fix the big issues that reform in particular are really picking up a lot of steam on? That's going to be things like immigration in particular. Do you have enough time, not just to get the numbers down, which the government is doing, to be fair, but to get the perception out there that this is a permanent change, or that you've changed the system in some way so that migration acts in the best interests of people who currently think that it doesn't? Does that extra 2 years, if you call an early general election and somehow win, does that actually achieve anything? Possibly not. But that's the key issue here. The particular things that the government, that Keir Starmer in particular has struggled with, are issues that anybody is going to struggle with. And it doesn't actually matter what party they are. It doesn't matter if they're Tory or Labour, or indeed if they're Reform. They are very difficult issues to do. If you do manage to get some headway in the next couple of years, does that filter through to the public in time, given the real animosity, I think, on both sides of the divide, which explains the rise of both Reform and the Greens to an extent?
The problem that Labour grapples with is communication, and although net migration figures are the lowest that they've been for some time, the perception is that they're still rising.
Yeah, because they've done such a terrible job of getting that message across. I mean, small boat crossings are 40% of what they were this time last year. But it's still being reported, oh, there's no boat today, oh, it's awful, oh, they're very high. There is a way of saying, there is an argument, I think, for saying that if you just change the person at the top and change the tune, change the comms, change the vibes, that you will have an improvement in that perception gap, and 3 years might be enough to get that across. I mean, Burnham was talking about that today. He plainly wants to get that point across that he approves of some of the restrictions that are being brought in by Shabana Mahmood, and that the figures are coming down, and that it's all good, and he wants to keep pushing that. But, you know, that's one of the things that Starmer has failed so badly on. He failed on it on day one when he came out after winning the election. He came back from the palace and then stood in Downing Street and said everything's going to get worse before it gets better. And everyone went, oh, God, this is what we just voted for. And, you know, if he had just come out and had a vibe that just said, right, it's going to be hard, but we'll give it our best shot. You've got your faith in me. Let's crack on. Come on, team. You know, it would have been maybe a whole different way of just looking at it.
That's kind of what he did, though.
No, he didn't. He said...
now you're going on perception and not actually talking about what he really said.
Oh, he talked about resetting Britain and a 10-year project and all the rest of it, and yes. But that stuff came after he set the tone of that speech, saying it's all going to get worse before it gets better. And you're like, that's the thing that everybody's remembered, and that is the vibe that people have carried away from the first 2 years of the Starmer government.
I think, you know, vibe is one way of putting it. Vision is perhaps another. You need to be able to sell a vision to people. And to be fair, this is actually something that I think Reform slightly falls down on, because just saying, well, we want fewer migrants and we want to bring taxes down, those as of themselves might stand up quite well as policies. Is that a vision for Britain, the society? No, it's not. So actually... they're doing very well right now on resentment, as are the Greens as well, basically on resentment towards the mainstream parties. But neither of them have actually got yet solidified something that they can go to an electorate with, say, you're voting for us for this long-term idea, rather than, well, you're voting for us because you really hate these people. There's still a bit too much of that with Reform, I think.
Communication is the key, isn't it? Yeah. All round.
The Reform vision is Darling Buds and May. They just want everyone to be, it's going to be like Pop Larkin. It'll be perfect. And it's just that's
perfect.
Yeah, if we just go back in time, everything will be perfect.
Well, I'm sold.
No, it won't.
Brilliant
no
impression.
Heating, no indoor water, no Sainsbury's.
You know, they're sat there right now going, this ain't half bad. OK, let's get this down.
You're giving them tips, giving the politicians tips. Benedict and Susie, thank you very much. Coming up, more from Thomas Tuchel on high-profile emissions from his World Cup squad. Stay with us.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry.
It is an anti-woman agenda. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Were you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Sky News, get the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
OK, nothing to see here, drama over, full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Let's catch up with all the very latest sports news and David.
How would you describe James Milner, the person?
Boring.
I went there probably thinking the same as everyone else, the boring James Milner, anything but.
Dry English humour.
He's always the last man standing on a night out.
He's got another side to him.
Doesn't drink, but he's there to the end. If you leave early, you're getting stick.
Obviously the parody account got set up.
He was one pre-season, it came out. Whoever it is, we still don't know.
He countered that, didn't he? Unassuming, humble, great fun, great to be around, incredible company.
A very unique player and a unique person.
James is a wonderful player, an outstanding footballer, but players get linked consistently here.
He knows what the club thinks about him, and we will wait for his decision.
I had 2 years left, and I was looking to stay at the club when the contract didn't come, and then eventually a contract came, and it was effectively a pay cut. You know, in the end, the club offered something which was probably at the time when I'd made my mind up was right at the end, whereas the mindset originally was to stay. he got to a point where he was like, well, might be better off going.
I think at that time it would have been coming to the end of Steven Gerrard's time, hearing that James Milner was going to become available because he hadn't renewed with City. And he was certainly, you know, right at the top of our list of key targets to go after. I got a phone call from Matthew who said James would like you to come out to his house and just spend some time with you, which I'd never kind of had that before. I'd met with players and agents, obviously for lots of different deals, but James was very keen that I went out and spent some time out at his house with him and Amy, his wife. And I felt like I and Liverpool Football Club were being interviewed by James.
I know how I'm going to be when I go there. I'm going to give absolutely everything to whatever club I'm playing for. I'm going to give them everything I have every single day on and off the field. For me, it's what's your intentions and what's the plan, and you know, you're saying this to get me there, but is this going to happen?
Rodgers has spent more than £70 million on transfers this summer. One player who's arguably impressed most on tour, though, didn't cost a penny.
I've been fortunate to play for a lot of big clubs in my career, and with that comes pressure, and that's what you want. You want to be playing at the top level with and against the best players.
Millie's such a good laugh around the dressing room, always one of the lads, but when it's time to be serious and time to work, and then he's on another level really, so he had a really good balance. He's very much black or white, to be fair.
He set the standards in training. I think I seen that from the first day I trained with him. He was the one that demanded standards. He was the one that if anyone wasn't quite at it, they would get told that they weren't. Every day that I trained with James Milner, I don't think he was.
Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, the hot, sunny weather is going to stay with us over the bank holiday weekend and well into next week. Over time, however, the highest temperatures will shift westward, with North Sea coast picking up an onshore breeze. For now, rain over western Scotland will clear away northward, leaving a narrow rain belt to travel southward overnight. There's a chance this may bring some thundery outbreaks to Lincolnshire, East Anglia and the southeast around the dawn. Low cloud and sea mist will return to western coasts. It's a mild night for all, with temperatures holding in the mid-teens Celsius. This morning, any remaining rain will clear away.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
That was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News with Sam Naz next. Do stay with us.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War